today I'm going to be speaking with Dhruv Sampat, who's a very dear friend of mine. We were in engineering together, and right now Dhruv is a edtech entrepreneur with more than a decade of experience in this domain. He's currently the founder of Vedika AI. It's a personal AI tutor, and before this, he's also founded Study Pack, an edtech platform to make learning easier. Prior to that, Dhruv was working as analytics manager for Chegg, and he's the vice president. He was the vice president of analytics at Course Hero, an online learning platform for students to access study resources like flashcards and tutors, etc. So I would like to welcome you, Dhruv, on today's podcast, and it would be great to converse with you today.
Thanks, Ashish. Very nice to connect with you after a while. You
Yeah.
are a very dear friend. It's very exciting to talk to you.
Sure, sure. So Dhruv will get started with this. First, like if you can, like it's been a while, so if you can just let us know, like what are your topics of expertise or interest, over the years.
My expertise is very simple. So my primary background is in data science, analytics, business analytics. So building these functions from scratch at startups and then helping executives make decisions with data,
Hmm.
and create a culture of data and data visibility within the company. I think we've all known over the last decade how powerful data has been
Yeah.
in helping companies grow, optimize, make good decisions, get visibility about operations, customers, the
Mhm.
markets, all of it, right? So I've been the data guy at two of the biggest edtech companies in Silicon Valley, Chegg and Coursero. So that's my skill-based expertise. My domain expertise, I would say, is that that's the only thing I've worked in. I've been super passionate about it, and
Mhm.
now even the startups that I've done are in that domain.
Sure, sure. So, what has been like your career trajectory? Like, any things you would like to highlight? Because like we did engineering together, and then you moved away to the US and you got into the data science and analytics part of it. So, how would you say, you evolved into that kind of a setting? Like, any things that you would want to highlight?
Sure. So just like you, we did a 4-year computer engineering degree. I got a job at TCS, but just after 3 or 4 months over there, I started to realize that I wanted to have a bigger impact on companies from a business perspective.
Hmm.
So that made me realize I need to get a business education, which was still going to allow me to leverage my analytical skills,
Hmm.
and that would give me an opportunity to get into a position of leadership in
Hmm.
a company, which would allow me to take decisions that would have a bigger impact in the organization. So I decided to do engineering management. One option was, obviously doing MBA, but getting into a top university in the US, with just a year of experience
Yeah.
in the IT industry in India was not going to be possible.
Yeah.
Engineering management was a bit of a sweet spot where I could get into a top university, with the credentials that I had,
Yeah.
and at the same time, I could get like business skills, but from a technology company perspective. That's where I got the opportunity to study at Stanford in the management science and engineering program. I did that for 2 years, and uh, over there at Stanford, I got very passionate about education. I think one
Hmm.
of the things which I always felt I had a knack was you know trying to think about technology solutions that can help students in different domains. And
Yeah.
I got very lucky. I
Hmm.
got to work at Chegg, which was a textbook rental company. Started off as a data scientist. The company grew and I grew with it. And then
Right.
the opportunity came along to work at Course Hero. And there, I was part of the first 3 people in the company,
Hmm.
grew the data science function from scratch. The
Yeah.
company did amazingly well, and my career trajectory took off with it. I briefly went back to Chegg again as head of retention analytics,
Hmm.
because Chegg was also a company which was the number one player in the space. And, I was always curious, what are some of the things that Chegg is doing better than Coursera, from a product operations perspective.
Hmm.
I think I really wanted to get those insights. I think once I got that, I felt, my kind of like professional education, as you would say, in EdTech was complete. And I was ready to take the plunge myself.
Right.
Study pack was an interesting idea. Started off for 2 years, and then ChatGPT came along, and I realized that,
Yeah.
so then I've pivoted over to Vedika. Vedika is and understand what their shortfall in a topic is that is a part of the syllabus, and then come up with a personalized learning plan, through Q&A, and then help you learn through those Q&A, leveraging AI to get better and be able to practice and ace your exams.
Okay, sure. So yeah, I mean, your thought around creating more like a higher impact from a business point of view, that resonates with me, because even I came to that line of thought, in my career too, that I mean, you need to have a bigger impact in terms of business. So I kind of resonate with that thought, and also the fact that what you mentioned, like, when Chat GPT and AI kind of became more mainstream, it definitely has a bearing on a lot of these industries, with I think EdTech being one of the industries which saw a great impact, right, of this. Or I think it's in the nascent stage, I would say, even at this moment, like you're building Vedika right now. It's a pretty nascent stage. Would you say that, like, for AI into EdTech, things are still getting built out?
It is very nascent. You're absolutely right. But I would build on what you're saying by saying that this is kind of like the moment wherein like the digital camera came and completely disrupted like the traditional film camera, or like how smartphones came and like all other handheld devices were, I think, going to be history. AI is going to introduce that in the education space. It is going to be a technology that is leveraged to build tools that is completely going to change. Teaching hasn't changed, today, in the classroom as it was for the last 50 years. There's a teacher or a professor coming in and delivering the lecture. There are different media that have come in, but still the traditional mode hasn't really changed. I think AI presents an opportunity to bring in a lot of things besides just the content delivery. Even add a layer of empathy. Create an environment where students can ask any questions without being judged. And in the long run, I feel that AI will take over much of the content delivery as well, and make the teacher more of a coach and a facilitator, in the classroom, as compared to somebody that has the onus of making sure that everybody in the classroom is learning and progressing, which I think is a very onerous task for one individual.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I was having this conversation recently with someone that, like our generation, we saw the evolution of technology, which we are still seeing today, right? We saw internet evolve, coming to this stage of generative AI. And I can see the next generation, like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, which is now there. They are more like digital natives, and more comfortable with technology than maybe our generation, because they have lived that life. So I think AI, as you said, right, it's the new thing, and like a new line of thought and way of thinking around, let's say, products or things in general. So I think the next generation, as you said, like you're building a product right now which integrates this and it's built for the future. I think the next generation which comes out, as this generation is comfortable with, let's say, digital, they would be more in tune with even AI. I mean, I think they will take even AI for, like we take technology for granted, let's say right now. Those will be the people who will expect AI to be part of their day to day. So maybe that kind of uh, might be a thought that even you might have got at some point of time, right?
100%, I agree with you. 100%.
Right. So that's great. Yeah, another thing was, like, since we're talking about your company, Vedika AI. So notice that you moved away from study pack and you made a pivot into Vedika AI. So like, how did that decision to pivot into this second company come about for you?
So initially, when I was working at Check and Course Hero, those two companies were about, creating digital study resources like past exams, homeworks, lecture notes. what I was trying to do is I was trying to take that one level up and tag those to a service. So wherein like instead of a student just randomly having to like come across a say a study resource and they're like, okay, now what do I do with it? I wanted to create a learning path. So like say organize the lecture notes and the tests from week 1, week 2, week 3, and then even create uh, tests at regular intervals that can help them prepare for their college exams. Like, think about it this way. If say you are studying at say University of California, Los Angeles or University of California, Berkeley, there was no platform within the US that, allowed a University of Berkeley student to go and take a test online for their Berkeley econ course or their Berkeley computer science course.
Okay.
That is what the goal was. But once ChatGPT came along, one thing that I started to realize is that even if I'm say incorporating it and trying to build tests through it, it was more or less just going to be a wrapper around the AI technology. So I didn't really feel a strong sense of continuation. And even the need to have study materials, which was kind of like somewhat of a clone of like say Coursera or Chegg. That product by itself, even though the market was very big, was not going to have a future. I wanted to rather focus on building something which was going to be high impact, disruptional, then be like a third or a fourth player in a market where two big companies had been around for 10 years. I have no shame in admitting that I tried my best, but I realized that it's a bit of an uphill battle. So I think generative AI really presented a new opportunity, and that's where the idea for Vedika came along. Subconsciously, I'd always been motivated to do something in India and for students here. And as it sometimes like stars align, one of my co-founders, Mr. Anirudh Khaitan, he's the owner of the Khaitan Public School System. I managed to get in touch with him, with one of my co-workers, and we brainstormed this idea for Vedika, and now we have launched the MVP at his school. So it just feels like as if the stars aligned at the right time, and it just aligned with my motivations too.
Correct. No, I mean, I don't think anybody was prepared, to be honest, like for such a drastic change to happen in the industry so soon. Like even I am in the digital marketing world for some time now. So, I mean, even that got transformed through this generative AI. So I don't think anybody was actually, and I think maybe you also felt that it's better to make the leap in the initial stage where most of the product ideation and new products would come along. So I think from that perspective, maybe you also might have felt that let's pivot early. If you're going to pivot at all, maybe it makes sense to do it in the early stage, right, rather than waiting for the ecosystem to mature. Otherwise, great. Great, Dhruv. So another thing which I wanted to talk was like we do discuss marketing and growth on this podcast. So, like, what has your like marketing strategy looked like? Typically, you can maybe talk about Study Pack or even for Vedika, like anything you want to highlight which is particularly working for you, or anything that you have planned out for.
Sure. Actually, first let me touch with Study Pack. For Study Pack, the strategy that I was really trying to do was, capitalize on long tail SEO. So, one of the big characteristics of the US college student is when they study is they take the entire question, like whenever they are stuck on an assignment or, while they are studying for their exams, they take the question and put it in the Google search bar. So long tail SEO with differentiated content plays a very big role. And from there, it is your presentation and, convincing the student that you have the right study resource for them, along with the tools to help them understand it better. That was my goal, but with Study Pack, that did not work. I think, it was kind of like a philosophy that build it and they will come. I think that's my learning as an entrepreneur. That in the world of today, there's a very big onus on the entrepreneur to, create the education about your product, with your customers. First identify your niche, and then go very deep in educating them and getting your product right in front of them to drive early adoption. That's the that's more of the strategy that we are now trying to adopt with Vedika. So I would say the unfair advantage that I have with Mr. Anirudh Khaitan, being on my team is I have a direct access to a school, so I'm able to go to the school, be able to do pilots with a set of students and get their feedback and understand. So and continuously iterate. So my strategy now going forward is going to focus on B2B, because B2C in edtech is still a very hard market, and in the Indian sense, it is also a very saturated market. You already have a Byju's, you have Vedantu, and you have tons of like coaching centers. So I think really the opportunity here for me lies in terms of being able to partner with schools. My product is also set up in such a way that there's an incentive for the school to understand what the shortcomings of majority of their students are from an individual topic perspective in the syllabus.
Right.
Because you can still have great students, but there could be individual concepts that they could still be weak in. Teachers don't have the time or the resources to do this level of diagnosis,
Right.
and also set up a remedy channel. So I think that's really the opportunity for Vedika and personalized learning that we
Right.
are trying to implement.
Right. Right. So, like, I mean, edtech, like I also have worked with some clients in the edtech domain. For example, I think I worked with An Academy or something earlier. So, like, one thing which has fascinated me and which also ties in with what you're saying is, I mean, the target group for you or even for any edtech company is so varied because, see, you're getting feedback from, as you said, from the students, right, from the school. So basically, they are the end users of your product who are going to benefit from your product. But in a B2B setup, you have to have tie-up with schools or other educational institutes. So that also becomes part of your target group. And what I've seen is like the decision makers are typically parents of these students, right? Who kind of drive the demand. So it's like a very varied target group for EdTech specifically, where your users are somebody different. The people who are kind of getting the system is the school, and the decision makers are typically the parents of the students. So in have you faced this kind of a setup for yourself? Like, what would you say is like truly the TG of your product right today?
Sorry, I lost you there for a second.
No,
Truly,
no. Truly, what is truly the target group, for your product? Like, whom are you trying to reach out to?
the 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 true target group is still students, but at the end of the day, the administration and administering the product is going to be done by the school. So the way it's going to start is I'm going to try to sell this to the principal of the school
Mhm.
or the head of the school, from an administrative standpoint, in terms of how it's going to benefit the school.
Sure.
Then there is a component wherein it benefits the teachers also, because let's say if the school is having to do assessments to understand uh, the students' shortcomings,
Mhm.
the teachers can do spot assessment very quickly. So it's saving of time of them. And then the third stakeholder, or rather the third and the fourth, would be the parents and the teachers,
Right.
because at the end of the day, they are the ones who have to drive the value. So uh, my convincing journey starts first with the school administration, convincing them that this is going to be beneficial for all the stakeholders involved, the
Right.
teachers and the students, and then trying to leverage them in some sense, also to drive adoption among the students. Because one of the things which I would always which I always remember from my time, which I still think hasn't changed, is
Mm.
whenever our teachers or our sirs, whom from
Mm.
which we
Mm.
studied in the class, or we went to the coaching centers, they told us like, no, do this, if you do this, you're kind of guaranteed to get this grade or
Mm.
these many kinds of marks.
Yeah.
I think that made it easy. So I think if I can do a great job in convincing the administration,
Right.
I
Right.
think the students. And then in terms of like even keeping students engaged, it's kind of getting down to the individual features, the
Mm.
quality of the content,
Mm.
all of those, like detailed like
Yeah.
marketing features and product features
Right.
will start to play a role. So
Right.
yeah, it's level based like
Yeah.
targeting, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing which you mentioned, Dhruv, is like you are able to get feedback from your end users directly, right? Which is the students because the tie up with the school. So is that some lesson that after, let's say, going through the journey of starting study pack or even your other professional journey, is that something that you realize that, it's better to take feedback from your end users upfront and early, rather than, waiting for it further down the line? Is that something which, because you focused on that in your response, so I'm just thinking, like, is that something you
No, you're
uh,
100% right. And the other thing I'll say now is that response also has to be continuously iterative.
hmm,
Because what is also going to happen is,
hmm,
let's say, you build something, like, I mean, you do your initial research, right? Like, that is pain point based. You
hmm,
get an MVP out, you get,
hmm,
certain early adopters
hmm,
to try the product out. There'll be
hmm,
some good things, there'll be some bad things. You
hmm,
iterate on it.
hmm,
That iteration, I think, is also critical
hmm,
uh, in making sure that, you're setting up a feedback loop and continuously,
hmm.
doing the cycle of product improvements, feedback, product improvements, till,
Right,
you are getting to a point where you're starting to see that the adoption is starting to increase organically. I
right.
think this has been my biggest lesson from, what I didn't do well in while doing study back and trying to incorporate it right now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a great insight, because like I have been part of some product launches myself early, and like some of them failed spectacularly. If when we went back, I mean, I think this was the leading cause, that we were building in isolation and we waited too long to get the end user feedback. So by that time, other competitors had already moved ahead. So I think even that was my. So I was just trying to see. So now the learning is like, as you said, like get continuous feedback from the users and build your product around the feedback rather than around what's in your head, maybe when you start off. So that's
100%. And Ashish, I would build on that to further say that you kind of have to set up a pipeline of this, even as your company scales. Because one other thing that will also start to happen is once you gain traction,
hmm,
like it, your product can be very differentiated. But in the world of today,
hmm,
technology has been democratized to such an extent, right?
hmm,
So it's not hard for your competition to catch up. So if your feedback loop is continuous and
hmm,
fast,
hmm.
it allows you to stay one step ahead of the competition to even continue to grow and grow so large that it becomes difficult for them to catch up.
Right, right, right. Yeah, 100% agreed with that, Dhruv, for sure. Uh, okay. Another thing, so Dhruv, like you said, like as a founder, you have to kind of put your product in front of the users, is something we talked about. So do you also find value maybe in trying to build a personal brand for yourself, or is that like at some point on your radar of something that you would wish to do? Because that is something which is like the trend going forward. In fact, like I have seen a lot of people saying that if you want to build a product today, right, it's better to start with the audience, meaning that you start with building your brand, build an audience, and then build something for them. So it's gone to that level, is what I'm seeing right now. So I just wanted to know if that's also something which you have on your radar at some point in the future.
I'll be very honest, Ashish. Regarding that, I don't really have any theory or hypothesis. For me, I've just taken entrepreneurship in the aspect that, if you build a great product,
Hmm,
and if you are true to your passion in terms of what you're building,
hmm,
and your brand and visibility such that it is focused around that, educating the users, I think that starts to build it up. I think that's just my personal take
hmm.
to begin with. I think the product starts to build the brand of the founder.
Right.
That's the philosophy with which I'm operating right now.
Hmm,
In terms of like personal brand building, like, let's say, if I'm not building tech products, like, for me, it's hard to imagine, what does my personal brand really mean? Like, if I'm thinking about, okay, my name, what does that really represent, right? Like,
hmm,
am I, any expert in any particular area that I'm sharing content? Yeah, that could be one way to approach it, but I don't really consider myself an expert. So for me, the path I've just taken is build a great product. You
hmm.
create a personal visibility as and when it's needed to create visibility about the product. You go on platforms, talk about it, talk about person to do it, and why you have the skills to make something that'll be great and useful for other people. But that's really about it, uh, as far as at least I would say. But journey, my views could change. So
Sure.
uh, long story short, no strong perspective on it today.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Um, Fine. So, yeah, I mean, so like another thing was so you have been working in India for some time, and then you've also worked in the US now. So, what has been some aspects like or things that you can highlight? Or I mean, I think you worked in US for some time, and now you are back in India for a short while, etc. So there's a lot of in and out. So you might have also felt some differences in the way maybe things have changed, in India also, compared to let's say what things were 15 years back. So what have been your experiences or anything you want to share, or what even people, let's say, can adopt here, which might be best practices of what's happening in the US, for example.
So I think one of the things I've really loved about working in India, and most of my team is also from here, is the energy. I think the energy of everybody that is involved in the tech space is the space that I've worked in is just so much more compared to when I think about like 15 years back.
Hmm.
Even like I've hired interns in colleges, I've hired graduates straight out of college. The
Hmm.
level of skill that they have compared to like even like when we were passing out, like no offense to our batch, I think we had some very
Hmm.
good people who have done really well in their careers, but I think overall just the technical skills of the average person that is passing out, at least from the good institutions,
Hmm.
I think is energy. I think is something that I'm
Hmm.
I'm like it's contagious, it's infectious almost.
Hmm.
I think that is something that I've really liked. In
Hmm.
terms of I think what India could really learn is I think the finesse in terms of building the products.
Hmm.
Like whenever I've like worked with the people here,
Hmm.
one of the things which I've kind of had to like deal a lot with is to coach them in terms of like how to build something, which has a lot of finesse to it. Like,
Hmm.
think of that as, something that is, going back to your early question, that represents your personal brand. Like,
Hmm.
if you are an engineer, I
Hmm.
think about it
Yeah.
as this is something that, is going to be showcased and used by,
Right.
potentially thousands of people, and they're judging you on
Hmm.
what they have built. When I think, and, even go back to my journey over the last 10 years, I think some of the brightest and the smartest people that I worked with in the US in the engineering and on the product side, I think the level of finesse that they had, the level of process that they had in terms of like getting to the end stage, I think that is something that entrepreneurs, engineers, product people
Hmm.
in India, I think can really learn. I think India is also building some great products, but I think for the average founder or the average entrepreneur to, I
Hmm.
think, succeed far more, I think they could really
Yeah.
focus on the polish
Correct.
and the
Correct.
the
Correct.
packaging of what they are putting out.
Correct. No, I like 100% agree with your viewpoint, because like that's been even my opinion when I've seen a lot of products. Like for example, there is a Twitter alternative. For example, I don't know if you know, there's a Twitter alternative called Ku, which came out of India, and it's like you can say it's a Twitter clone. So I was just looking at that product and comparing it with Twitter. So what you said exactly, that stands out. That finesse kind of seems like one notch lower than what what's happened is like due to this globalization and internet exposing us to everything, even like as a consumer sitting anywhere in the world, not just India, I expect that level of finesse and that level of standardization in any product which I consume today. So I mean, if you want to be a major player and be like have the world as your market, like be a global player, then definitely you cannot afford to not live up to that expectation which maybe people have had consuming things over the last 20 years, I think. So you're right, like definitely. uh
100%.
yeah. uh Okay. So yeah, so switching gears, like I do know that you've been passionate about table tennis, and like you're a two-time US Open Gold Medalist, right? So like how did that come along? Because it's kind of difficult to like nurture a hobby and then actually achieve something with having something full time going on. How did that happen for you?
Okay. So, back in my days at Stanford, there used to be a table in our dorm. And over there, I started playing with, some of my classmates. And that kind of how I kind of got into it, but I was still not very serious. Then, when I started my first job at Chegg, there was, kind of like a friend, coworker, as you would want to call it. He was super interested. He was very good. And
Mhm.
I used to play with him. And I would still lose terribly, 21-4, 21-5, 21-7. One day he just beat me 21-0.
Hmm.
Zero. There was no mercy point given.
Hmm.
I tell you, I haven't felt more humiliated in my life than that
Uh,
day. And from that day, like he kind of got disinterested in playing with me because, like, he was somebody, who was kind of playing the odd tournament. He's like, dude, there's no fun playing with you. And I'm like, no,
hmm.
got to do better. And as it turned out, I started to, just play with the coach. And
Hmm.
I realized, like, he just made some very simple adjustments. And I started to win. I started to then go to leagues, and my game just got exponentially better in a
Hmm.
very short span of time. I don't know why.
Hmm.
And from then on, I was like, okay, I should try, like, if I'm winning in the leagues here, I should just try to go to tournaments and get serious about it.
Hmm.
The good thing about, life in the US was that there was a decent work-life balance.
Hmm.
You start off at 9, you get done at 6,
Hmm.
and then you have like the next 3 to 4 hours to yourself. And rather than trying to, like, go to the gym, just to kind of you
Hmm.
know stay healthy, I
Hmm.
felt this was like a better option. It was more engaging, it was
Hmm.
more fun.
Hmm.
So I started playing table tennis very regularly, to the point I realized I started playing like 7 to 8 hours a week.
Hmm.
Then it got to a point where, like, my level saturated. Uh, I wasn't, like, winning, like getting beyond a point in tournaments. And I was like, okay, if I really want to win like a gold medal, or win something, I need to get very serious about it.
Hmm.
I had a dietitian. I improved my entire
Hmm.
lifestyle.
Oh.
I started to work out with it as well, because one
Oh.
of the things I realized, that athletes that are serious, they just don't play. They have an
Hmm.
entire regimen to it. And
Right.
just the level of physical fitness that you have to be able to win and go all the way. Like,
Hmm.
the tournament there goes on for like 7 days, and you're playing up to like 6 to 7 hours every day. And
Right.
while like table tennis is not the most physically challenging sport,
Hmm.
one thing where fitness plays a role is how quickly you react. So,
Hmm.
you might not be tired, but, even that little level of tiredness that
Hmm.
causes your reflexes to slow down, that's
Hmm.
enough to, get your level to drop. And then, when I married like the diet, coaching, training with a workout, and
Hmm.
did that for like 2 years,
Hmm.
then I think again my results started to get better. And, the other
Yeah.
side impact of that, which was, you stay in
Yeah.
good health.
Hmm.
Uh, it even started to help me professionally. I was feeling, a lot more sharp at work. And
Hmm.
ultimately, after like failing a million times, I one tournament I turned up and finally won the gold medal.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot has gone behind the scenes. Like that's not, so apparent to people. Like, but there's a lot which is, like you said, diet and like that whole workout regimen. So a lot has gone behind it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll say, like, they say, you have to spend like 10,000 hours to like
Yeah.
be good enough to get into the Olympics. I think in all, I must have spent at least like 2,500 hours behind it. So I mean, still
Oh,
nowhere close. I was never going to get to the Olympic level or anything, but I just wanted to win a medal at the US Open, which was a goal. Accomplished it,
yeah.
done.
Sure. So, yeah, we're just coming to the end of the podcast. So if you can meet Dhruv, any person in the world, is there anybody that you would uh, want to meet, and have a conversation?
Novak Djokovic, hands down. Like, I'll tell you this much. Like, I have, like, even kind of like what I did in table tennis was very inspired by, what he did. If you look at his trajectory back in 2010, when like Federer and Nadal were, just like winning every Grand Slam, he
Hmm.
was a clear number three,
Hmm.
playing with his physical fitness, barely able to finish matches. And then all of a sudden, we started to see in 2011, Federer and Nadal couldn't really touch him. And, I started to dig deeper into how he kind of turned it around.
Hmm.
And he did a lot, like, just like the method and the entire template that he came up with to change his life, change his
Hmm.
game,
Hmm.
taking every little aspect of life that was going to play out in his game. nutrition, diet, sleep, to optimize all of those things, having the team of the best consultants and professionals around him. Just following him, I think, has a very big impact on my life in terms of how he approaches it and how he goes about it.
So Dhruv, one trend which you might have also noticed is like, let's say 15 years back, people in India specifically maybe were not as willing to take a risk and join a startup, and maybe that industry was also nascent, the startup industry at that point of time. So in your opinion, do you see a higher willingness for people to maybe hone their skills early and join startups at this stage? Like, is that something that you have noticed?
100%. I think right now, even some of the younger people that I'm hiring, interns in college, or people straight out of college, their hunger and willingness to actually like join, be part of the early team, I think is far more, and I've just seen it increasing every year. Because like even though I was in the US, I've managed to keep in touch with like what was happening in India. With my friends, we've also been in touch on and off. Uh, so overall, I think that the hunger to just join startups and seeing some of the impact that some startups coming out of India have had, how big they've been able to build fantastic products, become a brand, I think is certainly motivating and exciting. This fresh generation of new graduates to take the leap.
Great, great. And so Dhruv, if somebody wants to reach out to you or connect with you, what would be the best way?
The best way is LinkedIn. It's very easy to just send me a connection request.
Hmm.
Get in touch. I think it's the easiest way to find me. I'm very responsive typically.
Hmm.
Usually I'm visiting LinkedIn at least once a day.
Hmm.
So I think that's the simplest and the easiest way to be in touch with me.
Okay, great. So it was great talking to you today, Dhruv. We, I think, spoke about a variety of subjects today, and I'm sure like this would be very valuable. Whatever insights that you have given today would be very valuable to somebody who's maybe getting started into edtech or into entrepreneurship or in general. So thanks for this discussion today.
My pleasure, Ashish. Thank you so much for having me. And I think this is a wonderful initiative that you have started. So wishing you all the best for this initiative too.
Okay, thanks, Dhruv. Thank you.